In this lecture, we're going to find the component cost of debt. But before we get to that, here is the problem that I am going to use to illustrate how we find each component cost of capital as well as the weighted average cost of capital for Coleman Technologies. You might want to keep a copy of this slide handy as we go through each of the components. So for Coleman Technologies, they're considering a major expansion. Well, how are they going to pay for it? They're going to look at each one of their components of capital. This firm faces a tax rate of 40%. It could sell new bonds, 15-year, 12% semi-annual bonds, and the current price would be over $1,100. New bonds would be privately placed with no flotation costs. Its preferred stock is 10% $100 par value quarterly dividend perpetual preferred stock that currently sells for $111.10. Its common stock sells for $50. Its last dividend was $4.19. Its growth rate was 5%. For its Coleman Technologies, its beta is 1.2. The risk-free rate at this time is 7%. The market risk premium is 6%. The bond yield risk premium is 4%. And the target capital structure is 30% debt, 10% preferred, and 60% common equity. So let's get started with finding the component cost of debt. So you'll see in the weighted average cost of capital, that would be R sub D times 1 minus the firm's tax rate. That will be our marginal cost of debt capital. And so R sub D, marginal cost of debt capital, that factor 1 minus the tax rate is what adjusts that cost of capital from before tax to after tax. So we'll have two parts. First we'll find the before tax cost, then we'll find the after-tax cost. So we've got that 15-year, 12% semi-annual coupon bond that sells for that current price of $1,153.72. What is the cost of debt? Well, that's finding the yield to maturity. So R sub D is equal to yield to maturity. So the before tax cost of debt is equal to the debt's yield to maturity. So for this particular bond, we use our calculator to find yield to maturity. If we plug in everything that we're supposed to, our display should show 5%. But since this is a semi-annual coupon bond, where that 5% is just a semi-annual yield to maturity. We need to multiply it times 2. And the yield to maturity on this debt issue is 10%. So the before tax cost of debt of this issue is 10%. But we are going to turn it or make an adjustment for taxes, since the interest portion, only the interest portion is tax deductible. So we're going to take that before tax cost of debt that we used with our that we found with our calculator, 10%, multiply it times 1 minus the firm's tax rate. So after taxes, the cost of the firm of borrowing money is 6%. Now, there's something here on this slide. It says flotation costs are small, so ignore them. What are flotation costs? Flotation costs are the costs that are associated with floating or selling securities to the public. And sometimes that can be significant, other times not so much. With bonds, most bonds are privately placed. Therefore, we're going to ignore flotation costs with bond issues. However, for preferred stock and sometimes for common equity, they may be significant, and we're going to have to consider that. But for bonds, don't worry about dealing with flotation costs. Here's some extra practice in finding the before tax costs of debt in case you're a little rusty from chapter 7. So here are 2 problems that I've worked for you. So it's extra practice on finding a bond's yield to maturity. And that is the before tax cost of debt to the firm that is issuing or borrowing that money.